several books that allude to this, and one book which has even got the map references. The SAS was sent out into West Belfast, into Republican areas, to just shoot people at random in order to, supposedly, the idea was to get the politicians to come round the table. But this is not a sensible way to behave. And a lot of these soldiers have very bravely afterwards come out and said, we were involved in this. This is what we did. This is what we did, which is great to see. People have got the courage to come out after the event and confess, hold their hands up and say, well, look, yes, we were involved in some really tricky stuff.
But how high up the tree did this plot go? We talked about this brigadier. Was he under instruction higher up the train, or was that his own?
Well, you have to ask Lord Stevens about that. I would say that almost certainly, yes, these operations were approved higher up. Now, you know the way the CIA operates, which is that they are one step removed from the president. They do get their orders from the president, but if anything happens, they hold out their hands and say, this was us, it wasn't the president. We have a rogue thing going on in the CIA. So there's secret orders, I suppose you'd say, going down the chain.
I knew a guy in Devizes some years ago who was in the SAS in Ireland, and he had to take on the identity of a hobo with long hair and unwashed and generally sort of a state. And it's as much as anything what he didn't say, but the implication was there that they were doing covert type things and carrying people off and shooting.
Well, what was happening was people were being taken at random and drugged and then handed over to others. One lot of soldiers would then hand it over to another lot of individual soldier from the SAS, and the second one would actually do the killing. But the reason they were drugged, he was told the reason they were drugged is because they're very violent. Actually, the reason they were drugged was because they were just ordinary people, and that he may have a chat to them and discover, oh, this guy's just a baker, he's not even involved in anything. But of course, this all added fuel to the fire in Ireland, and got more and more people were recruited into the IRA as a result of this. So they were feeding the flames. Now we could get on to 9/11 and Afghanistan. Certainly the 9/11 attacks, to me, there are several real serious problems with the official story of the September 11th attacks, and I would say it was run very much as a kind of media operation. We saw there in Naomi Klein's film, we had live television coverage of it, which was just astounding. The fact that there were two planes allowed, we had all the cameras focused on the burning buildings for the first plane. From a media point of view, this was fantastic. You had live television coverage of the second plane going in fact, incredible. So
many different camera positions as well.
I spoke to a guy called Scott Forbes, who was working in the World Trade Center. He worked for a company called Fiduciary Trust, and he wasn't at work that day because he had a day off, because the previous weekend they'd had a power down from midday on the Saturday to midday on the Sunday. There was no power in the building, which of course means no security. Barriers weren't working and anyone could just go in and out. And he explains how he saw people in the building doing work that weekend. They were apparently doing cabling work of some sort. Now the Port Authority have subsequently denied this, but he's absolutely convinced. And I think he's he's still going on about this all the time. He's trying to get the Port Authority to admit there was a power down. Now, of course, his company supports him because they know what happened. But he then saw the whole attack from his apartment nearby. One of the biggest problems I have with the official story about September the 11th is the effective stand down of the North American air defences. Now, I know, as someone who worked in aviation, that when you have any aircraft which is hijacked or goes off course or doesn't report in with a standard radio check at a certain point on the flight, that fighters are scrambled, because what they want is a visual check into the cockpit. This is what air traffic control want to know, is what's going on. Has the plane depressurized? Is it still flying on automatic pilot? Is the pilot unconscious? They want to know immediately. Now, we had 45 minutes, these planes were flying around America with no action whatsoever from the US air defences, and I find that absolutely ridiculous. So I think what we're dealing with, and many people say there were exercises going on the day, what we're dealing with here is a total failure of the US air defence system on the day. Now, There are all sorts of theories about 9/11, but I don't think we really want to go into all of those now. All I'm saying is that certainly the story we were sold on the day is, I think, rubbish. Afghanistan was where everybody was told that Osama bin Laden, the guy with terrible kidney problems and all sorts of other... We saw a documentary on the television the other day looking into dead or alive Osama bin Laden. Well, I'm totally convinced the guy's dead because he was extremely ill at the time of September 11th attacks. He also, in one of the videos, you can quite clearly see he seems paralysed on one side of his body, which is one of the things you'd expect with the sort of condition he had. I'm not a medical expert. Sorry, we're going to say something.
So I just want to say it's very topical because I think it was Sky News today, Al Jazeera are going to release an audio tape of the man himself, Osama bin Laden, claiming credibility for the Christmas bombing attempt.
That's provided by the
again,
CIA, I expect.
Yeah, sure, sorry.
Well, one of the things in this BBC documentary, which was out a few weeks ago, was looking at voice morphing technology and all sorts of technology there is available to fake such videos. Now, there are increasing numbers of journalists who don't simply say, yes, here's another video of Osama bin Laden. So thank God for that. Then we have the 7/7 attacks on 7th of July 2005. That was in London on the Underground, etc. Now, I've taken this up a bit as a cause célèbre, really. Having been a journalist in London, working for the radio, and covered IRA attacks in the early 90s, when I saw this attack, I couldn't believe it. I thought immediately, there's something wrong here. First of all, most importantly, these people have absolutely nothing to gain by blowing up, as you were saying, by blowing up ordinary people, possibly Muslims as well, on these trains, people who are coming on their way on the tube on the way back from mosque or something. What on earth is going on? They're not going to gain anything by that. But then there are all sorts of other anomalies on July the 7th. Probably, well, there are all sorts, but the most important one is the fact. Well, it's ever so difficult to decide. There's so much. If people haven't seen it, the BBC did actually come and film me for a documentary about the London bombings, which went out last year, middle of last year. The Conspiracy Files, it's called.
Yeah. Then they always deny it.
Well, they do and they don't, right? But they actually did a reasonable job with that in looking at both sides, okay? I didn't think they could have...
They always seem to finish up by proving that it's a conspiracy.
Well, they hint at it. They hint at it being all rubbish, and we should just believe what we're told. But they also, by doing that, they also roll out some of the more serious stuff as well. No, the problem, I think, is the exercises that morning. I've spoken to a Ministry of Defence policeman who was working in the Department of Health at the time, and he's, on the record, I interviewed him, saying that there were exercises going on that morning. He was there at 8 o'clock in the morning at work. He arrived at 8 o'clock, and out the window he could see police in yellow jackets with groups of 3 or 4 of them doing these kind of testing down into the drains and this kind of thing, and moving around with the police cordon. Now, if there are exercises going on in the morning, then it looks like there may be some foreknowledge. But anyway, I don't think we need to go too deeply into the 7/7 attacks, only to say, does anyone know who runs the CCTV security on the London Underground? Because there's been no pictures of these guys actually shown on the day. Lots of pictures shown of, I think it's 7 days previously they came to London. All these pictures on the Underground, most of them that have been shown to the public, were on a trip several days beforehand. And if you look, even some of the BBC footage actually blanks out the date. You know, they have a little date on the corner of the CCTV. The company is called Verint Systems. It's a subsidiary of an Israeli firm called Comverse Technologies. And for 6 months before the London bombings, these people were running all of the CCTV and had access to the entire underground network. It's a private company. The bosses of both companies are ex-Israeli Defence Force, and which of course is normal because they all have to do military service over there, but they are senior people, and Daniel Bodnar, who's up until recently anyway was the chief executive of Verint, who've got this contract to do CCTV, was a senior officer in the Israeli Corps of Engineers.